Imagine for a moment a hidden current beneath the surface of history. A force so powerful it has swept away empires, reshaped nations, and redefined the very fabric of human life. Not once, but 5 times before. What if I told you that every major economic collapse in recorded history followed the exact same 6-stage sequence? Not similar patterns, not vague parallels, but the exact same mathematical progression, stage by stage, like clockwork. Rome in 476 AD, France in 1789, Weimar Germany in 1923, the United States in 1929, Argentina in 2001. 5 civilizations separated by centuries and continents, yet they all collapsed following an identical script. Here is what should terrify you. We are currently in stage 3. Think about that for a moment. This is not a theory about what might happen or a prediction based on economic models. This is a documented pattern that has played out 5 times in modern history. And according to the data, we have just crossed into the stage where every previous civilization entered an irreversible death spiral. The window between stage 3 and the final reset has historically been 24 to 36 months. Not decades, not years with an S, but months. You're probably thinking, this sounds dramatic, maybe even conspiratorial. But here is the thing about patterns in economic history. They do not care about politics, intentions, or how sophisticated we think we have become. They are mathematical, not emotional. And the math we are seeing right now is identical to what appeared in the ledgers of every empire before its collapse. Let me show you the mechanism, because once you understand how this works, you will see it everywhere. The sequence always begins the same way. In what economists call stage 1, easy credit. This is when a civilization discovers it can create money faster than it creates actual goods and services. In Rome, they diluted silver coins with base metals. In 18th century France, they issued paper money backed by Louisiana land nobody had actually surveyed. In the 1920s, we created installment buying and margin loans. In the 2010s, we invented 0% interest rates and quantitative easing. Stage 1 always feels like prosperity. It feels like progress. You can suddenly afford things your parents could not. Companies expand faster than ever before. Asset prices surge. The economy seems to be entering a new era where old rules no longer apply. According to Federal Reserve data, between 2010 and 2021, total U.S. debt grew by 89%, while GDP grew by just 42%. We were creating money at twice the rate we were creating economic value. But here is what makes stage 1 so seductive. It works for a while. Real businesses grow. Real jobs get created. Real wealth accumulates, at least on paper. Then comes stage 2, debt saturation. This is when the amount of debt in the system reaches a critical threshold where adding more debt no longer stimulates growth. Think about it from your own life. If you have no debt and someone offers you a low-interest loan, you might start a business, buy a home, invest in education. That loan creates economic activity. But if you already owe $200,000 and someone offers you another $50,000, you are probably just using that new debt to service your old debt. No new business, no new home, just a bigger hole. The Bank for International Settlements identified this threshold in a landmark 2011 study. They found that when total debt exceeds roughly 90% of GDP, additional borrowing actually starts subtracting from economic growth rather than adding to it. We crossed that line in 2010. Our current debt to GDP ratio sits at 123%, and that is just federal debt. Add in corporate, household, and financial sector debt, and we are looking at over 350% of GDP. Here's where it gets interesting. Stage 2 creates a trap that leads directly to stage 3, production stagnation. When everyone is drowning in debt, they stop spending money on new things and start spending money on interest payments. You have probably felt this in your own budget. Instead of taking that vacation or upgrading your car, you are making minimum payments on credit cards. Instead of expanding operations, businesses are refinancing existing loans. The economy does not collapse during stage 3. It just stops growing. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, U.S. productivity growth has averaged just 1.1% annually since 2010, compared to 2.3% during the previous 30 years. We are running twice as hard and moving half as fast. But here's the mathematical problem that makes stage 3 so dangerous. When your economy stops growing, but your debt keeps accumulating interest, you enter what I call the interest trap. Let me put this in terms you can visualize. Imagine you earn $50,000 a year and you owe $100,000 on various debts at 5% interest. That is $5,000 in annual interest payments, or 10% of your income. Manageable, right? Now imagine your income does not increase for 10 years, but your debt grows to $200,000. Now you are paying $10,000 in annual interest, 20% of your income. Still difficult, but survivable. But what happens when your debt reaches $500,000? You are paying $25,000 annually just in interest, half your income. At that point, you cannot save, you cannot invest, you cannot build wealth. You are trapped in a cycle where every dollar you earn goes to paying interest on past decisions. This is exactly where we are as a country right now. The Congressional Budget Office reported that in 2024, the United States paid $892 billion in net interest on the national debt. That same year, our GDP grew by approximately $900 billion. Do you see the problem? We are at the point where 100% of our economic growth is being consumed by interest payments on old debt. This is the smoking gun. This is the mathematical point of no return that has preceded every major reset in history. When interest payments match or exceed GDP growth, the machine breaks. You cannot tax your way out because you would need to confiscate 100% of economic growth. You cannot grow your way out because all growth immediately flows to creditors. You cannot even inflate your way out without triggering the next stages, which I will explain in a moment. Pop quiz. What happens when a family reaches the point where all their income goes to interest payments? They default, declare bankruptcy, or negotiate a debt restructuring. Those are the only 3 mathematical options. And guess what? Countries have the exact same 3 options, though they dress them up with different names: hyperinflation, jubilee, or war. But here's what you need to understand about stage 3. It is not the collapse. It is the stage right before the desperate measures begin. It is the moment when policymakers realize conventional tools no longer work and they start reaching for unconventional solutions. France in 1788 tried taxing the nobility. That triggered revolution. Weimar Germany in 1922 tried printing money. That destroyed the currency. The United States in 1929 tried doing nothing. That caused the Depression. Argentina in 2001 tried freezing bank accounts. That caused riots. According to research from Harvard economists Carmen Reinhart, of the 70 major sovereign debt crises since 1800, 70%, exactly 0, were resolved without either inflation exceeding 20%, debt restructuring that wiped out creditors, or military conflict. Not one country managed to simply grow their way out once they hit the interest trap. The precedent is 70 for 70. Think about this from the perspective of your own financial planning. If you knew with absolute certainty that a specific event would happen within 36 months, how would you position yourself? Would you keep your money in the same places? Would you maintain the same investment strategy? Would you assume tomorrow will look like yesterday? The uncomfortable truth is that we are no longer in the what-if phase of this cycle. The Treasury Department's own data shows we have crossed the mathematical threshold that historically triggers the final 3 stages. Stage 4 is currency debasement, the printing phase where governments try to inflate away the debt. Stage 5 is social fracture, the point where the population realizes the game is rigged and trust in institutions collapses. Stage 6 is the reset itself, the moment when the old system breaks and a new one emerges. Every single civilization that reached Stage 3 proceeded to Stage 6. Not most, not some, all of them. The timing varied slightly depending on how aggressively governments tried to fight the mathematics, but the sequence never changed. Understand this. The 6-stage pattern is not a theory or a model. It is a documented historical fact that is played out 5 times in modern civilization. Here is the question that should be keeping you up at night. If we are in Stage 3 now, and history says we have 24 to 36 months until Stage 6, what do the next stages look like? More importantly, what happens to your savings, your investments, your retirement accounts when we enter those stages? Because if you think the government is going to just figure this out and everything will be fine, I need you to look at the historical record. 5 civilizations fought the same thing. 5 civilizations were wrong. The pattern is repeating. The mathematics are identical. The outcome is approaching. But here's the thing about knowing the pattern. It gives you time to prepare that previous generations did not have. They did not see it coming because they did not know the sequence. You do. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? You are probably skeptical right now, and you should be. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So, let me show you something that will make your blood run cold. I am going to overlay 2 charts, one from 1929 and one from 2021. And you tell me if you can spot the difference. In 1922, the Dow Jones Industrial Average stood at 63 points. Over the next 7 years, it climbed to 381 points, a 505% increase. During that same period, margin debt, money borrowed to buy stocks, grew from virtually nothing to over $8.5 billion, roughly 13% of GDP. Consumer credit exploded as Americans bought cars, radios, and appliances on installment plans for the first time in history. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates low to help Europe recover from World War I. Credit was everywhere, and it was cheap. Now look at our era. In 2009, the S&P 500 bottomed at 676 points. By January 2022, it had reached 4,796, a 609% increase. Margin debt grew from $177 billion to $936 billion, also about 13% of GDP, according to FINRA data. Corporate debt doubled, consumer debt hit record highs, and the Federal Reserve? They kept interest rates at 0 for 7 years and pumped $4.5 trillion into the financial system through quantitative easing. The parallel is not approximate. It is almost identical, down to the percentage increases and the ratio of borrowed money to economic output. But here is where it gets truly eerie. In both eras, the public discourse was the same. In 1928, economist Irving Fisher famously declared that stock prices had reached a permanently high plateau. In 2021, ARK Invest's Cathie Wood predicted the S&P would hit 15,000 by 2025. Both believed we had.